So I'm here today with a very good friend of mine. This is Jesse DeCourcy. How you doing, Jesse?
I'm doing very well, Matt. Thank you for asking. How are you doing?
Doing very well too. So Jesse's been very much a part with Trish and I in the whole release of Eden's Blueprint, right back when we decided this was going to be a thing and when we were going to do that thing and all that sort of stuff. Jess, you were always there going, can I help? How can I help? And you've just done such an extraordinary job for us and getting Eden's Blueprint out there done. And then at some point, you and I had the conversation around creating a course called
Yes.
Eden's Blueprint. So we're going to chat a little bit around that. So Jess has got a bunch of questions she wants to ask me, and we're going to see if this is going to be helpful for you guys if you want to do a course with the author. Can I say that?
I hope so. I think you can say it now.
Yeah. So Jess, what questions you got for me?
Well, maybe the first question that's the most important would be, what shirt are you wearing right now, Matt?
I am wearing the Eden's Blueprint shirt for everyone to see. Which extraordinary human designed this shirt, Jesse?
I want to take full credit,
Okay.
but my husband, Trevor, the amazing Trevor, also helped. So the blue on the shirt was all him. So good job, Trev.
So cool. And this is the same tree that's on the front of the book, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
Love it. Absolutely
And
love it.
to Michelle.
Yep. So Michelle Mauricio, like awesome.
Right. Awesome.
And
There
awesome.
it is.
There it is. The hardback version.
Yes. Well, I think I'm probably the most excited for this class of any human being because I want to take, well, I can't say I'm the most excited for the book, but I have been waiting for this book for a solid year as soon as I heard about it. So it's here. And the thought of putting this into a 5-week course is so exciting because I want to dive deep into the revelation and community with people and see what else we can discover together as we do this. So as we were talking about themes, Matt, we were discussing a little bit of those bigger Bible themes that we get in the story, God's story. So just a really simplified concept of the meta narrative or the bigger theme of the Bible, where we look at the creation story, we look at the story of the fall, which we'll dive into a little bit because Matt has some great thoughts on that I find really fun to discuss with him. And with transitioning into redemption and restoration. And as I was reading Eden's Blueprint for the first time, that's the theme that I kept coming back to, because in that story, we can see our own stories. And that's how it's laid out through your story, the bigger story, and how cool that we could break that down and discuss that each week is kind of the overall idea of the class and what we'll do together. So some of the questions I had around that would be, first of all, this first week that we dive into, we talk about your introduction to this experience of love that you had in Lebanon. So just some questions or thoughts surrounding that and what that experience was for you and how we'd talk about that together.
Yeah, that one story of in Lebanon, that was 2019. And I came at an invitation from a friend of mine who said, would I be interested in coming and just seeing what God's doing? And the language around it was like discerning what God's doing over there. And Lebanon is not a place that I ever thought that I would go to. I actually grew up in a part of Sydney where it was quite Lebanese, and it was quite difficult for me. And there was one time I got beaten up pretty bad. And so somewhere deep down inside of me, all those years ago, I felt like God just going, there's something here that needs to heal. And he did more than heal it. I now have such a passion and a love for Lebanon, and for the work of what God is doing there, that has literally changed my life. And I'll be forever grateful for the moments of time that I got to spend there with the people. And so like I was already well into writing this book in that time, and I'd already written a whole bunch of it. But when I went to Lebanon and I encountered the love of God in the most extraordinary of places, and it doesn't take a person long just to listen to some of the stories inside of the book to see the places that we went to were just hard, like really hard. And life was just challenging. And I've just never seen poverty like I've seen. I've never seen places where people have been so directly affected by war. And I got to hear stories that you just can't make up. Like Hollywood could not exaggerate them. They were really challenging. And there I got to see the love of God turning lives around and building lives of integrity and honor and restoration. And all of these concepts that are inside this book, I found them in the slums of Beirut. And so those experiences started shifting and changing a lot for me. So when I started thinking about this whole concept of Eden's blueprint, going back to original design, I look back to those places where there was nothing else that could influence it other than the people that were present. I found that in Beirut, but I also believe I find it way back in the Eden story. And so it's kind of why I love, and I wanted to start in Lebanon for the book.
Mhm. Oh, I love that so much. And it was such a good entry point, I think. And we didn't really talk about the prologue or epilogue either.
Yeah.
Because I think that ties so much into the introduction in Lebanon too. Do you want to touch on that at all?
Yeah, the epilogue and prologue, like a lot of people who have been reading the book, like this is part of what they're really getting fired up about. It's literally a parable through my lens of being an eagle, if I can say that, in Eden, and looking at the different ways that creation unfolded around an event that was really challenging. And for me, in every one of our lives, there are many events that unfold in our lives that are really challenging. And some of those events we think are such deal breakers, we'll never come back from them. And so often in the Bible story, we see these massive events, but we see these themes of redemption. We see the themes of story. We see the themes of restoration. And I wanted to create like a parable, so a fiction concept of all that I held inside the pages of the book in a non-fiction kind of way. So the prologue and epilogue, they bookend the book, and it's just something like, it was the last thing I added to the book, and I was just out walking with Trish, and we were just chatting around the idea of what we needed, and I felt like there was something else that the book needed, and I love the concept of allegory, and so I decided to have a crack at it. And turns out that my editor liked the crack at it. Michelle was like, wow, this is really cool. And then a whole bunch of people really liked it, and so we kept it. And so now that's the prologue and the epilogue of the book.
I love that. And again, to this idea of the meta narrative being the overarching theme of the Bible, but each book of the Bible, you can see part of those themes played out in each story, as well as your story. But even in the prologue and epilogue, there's again that theme of that story and creation there that plays out, and you see it in the whole book.
Yeah.
Well done. Beautiful.
Thank you.
And absolutely everyone's favorite so far. Just incredible. All right, so week 2, we were thinking of more of as you said, you began back in Eden, and you had some great conversation around the blueprint and design, and Eden being the Father's heart. So is there anything there you want to just give people a teaser about that?
Yeah. Well, and this may wrap into weeks 2 and 3 of a teaser, but I think so much of Christianity operates around what we call the fall, where I think God designed us around his image. And it's that concept that I want to hone in on and discover. And I think it's all the way through the Bible. He loves us He has declared us clean. Christ has forgiven us. He takes us back to these places of nothing separates us from the Father's love. So I wanted to dwell in the first two chapters of the Bible and listen for the design, listen for the way that Adam and Eve connected and what that actually means, and allowing that then to be a bigger conversation around design. You are unique. You have been designed by God on purpose, all of that sort of concept, but he is loved. We are designed for love and we are designed to love. So that sort of stuff.
Which leads us into my favorite discussion at the moment with you, Matt. And this would be week 3, but this concept of the fall.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about this for a minute. You do not like the word fall.
Yeah.
We've talked about substituting that out with other things, but in your own story or in stories, my own story, we seem to have this moment of crisis, and looking at those moments maybe with a different lens in the bigger picture too. But as we unpack that particular thing, what can people look forward to maybe being stretched in that conversation?
Well, I think too, like so much of Christianity, from my perspective and from my history, has revolved around the problem of sin. I think there is vastly more to understand of the extraordinary grace of God. I am a massive believer that Christ's sacrifice dealt with sin and the consequence of sin as far as God is concerned. And there's still consequences when we choose to do things poorly and that sort of stuff. But this word fall is one of those words that I've heard my entire life. I'm sure it's been spoken out for as long as, I don't know, since Jesus was a boy, maybe. I don't know. Maybe since Adam was a boy. I don't know. But we have this phrase that we fall from grace when we do something wrong. That phrase has been spoken over my life. And in the book, I address some of that sort of stuff too. I don't think you can fall from grace. I think the grace of God is so infinitely big, so powerful, and that our attempt to say that we fell from grace, I understand falling from people's graces, but this is a biblical story about a God who is about redemption. And so to quote the statement, a fall or the fall, I just want to have a bit of a CLR moment before we start making massive definitions like that and just running with it. Because I think there is a lot of the kingdom that flowed out of that moment for all of us who have ever found ourselves in crisis or failure, poor choice, any one of that. But I'm just not sure about that word, the fall. Is that enough, Taster?
I think so. If you're watching this and you don't want to sign up for the course yet, well, we might have to have a conversation, but yeah, that's perfect. And before we go into that redemption process, and one thing we talk about a lot in this community at Greater Things is those talking snakes.
Yeah.
And identifying those. So there's some great chapters there where you help people in that redemption process of their own lives and identifying things. Is there anything burning on your heart that you'd like to talk about a little bit more with that?
Another taster?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I think redemption is all about the restoration of our story, our name. And I think that in the Christian world, we don't understand identity. We hear people say that you're a child of God or a son or a daughter of God, but I want to lead people beyond that to discover the name. The Jacob wrestling with God. There are so many people wrestling with God for their identity, for their design. And sometimes I think we let go a little bit too early. And I want to help people into that place of redemption. So you are not known by your mistakes. You are known by the Father. That sort of stuff.
Yes. Oh, that's good. All right, so that final week we go into the restoration, and you share some really powerful stories too from the Bible. So one question that I asked you was, which was your favorite story that you unpack? Or where we see that process?
Yeah. It's interesting because every one of those stories are ones that I've found an enormous amount of revelation in. And I'm often going back to those stories just to sit with them to go, I need more out of that one story. If I was forced to pick one, so if Jesse said, no, stop avoiding the question and just answer the question.
Yes.
Jesse would never say that to me, but I love Gideon's story.
Mhm.
I love a guy who's plucked out of obscurity. We don't know anything about him other than he wants to look after his family in a way that is trying to feed them. And so we don't meet him as perfect. We don't meet him as sinner. We just meet him as Gideon, but God meets him as mighty hero. That identity piece that Gideon would seemingly question as the story unfolds, it flows into such a powerful way because it goes from encounter to understanding a belief system that he's held on to for years, through to seeing the victory of God, but also with dream interpretation thrown in there as well. So yeah, there's a lot of things I'm passionate about with that story.
So good. Now, if you haven't read the book, you have to, because you need to read the other ones to see what story is your favorite that Matt talks about. I don't have to answer that question though. I like them all. All right. So one other question is just what would you like people to get out of this course, or what's one thing you're most excited for people to get out of this course?
I think part of my heart for writing is for people to ask questions. Like one of the things, Jess, that we've been told repeatedly is this book is stretching me. And I like that phrase. I like it a lot. It doesn't mean you have to agree with me. It doesn't mean that at all. It just means that I'm inviting you to think about things that I have found in my own life, things that I've wrestled with in my own life. So everything I'm teaching are things that I apply. And if I can't apply them, they're just theory. And I don't know if I've been in the church for that long, that I'm just tired of theory and I want application. I want the reality of God working in and through my life. And so my stories flow from those places of extraordinary encounter, to some of the revelations God has given to me, the extraordinary restoration of my marriage, all of that sort of stuff. That's the sort of place I want people to see, that this is what I'm learning and this is how I'm applying it. And this is the fruit, if we can use it that way, that I'm gaining from it. So yeah, that's kind of what I'd be hoping. I would hope people were stretched in some way, shape or form. I hope it creates a different paradigm at times for us to look at, maybe even the creation story through, and to discover something more of the Father's heart for us all from that original design perspective.
Love that. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. And you do so good at inviting questions like mine. I have one more question.
Yeah.
So for people that might not know what that means to have the freedom to ask questions, or what that looks like, maybe they haven't been in this community, what are some questions that you are being asked in some of these Q&As, or some things that, some maybe tangible examples that people could understand what questions will be asked or that they could ask?
Well, I think the biggest part that we get asked this question about stretching around is simply around the power of the cross of Christ, and like, why did it even have to happen? And so if God was still meeting with people before the cross and after the cross, like, what is the concept of the cross and what did it actually do? And so I want to lead people into an understanding, or helpful understanding, of discovering the power and the enormity of the cross. I think at times the church has minimized the power of the cross because we still think that there's more yet to come. We still think that there's some sins that we haven't confessed, or whatever there is that maybe somehow or other Jesus missed. I don't know. I just want people to see the enormity of what God has done for us through the cross, backwards in time, forward in time, and now. And so, yeah, so there's lots of people ask questions around the Lebanon stuff because, like, it's intriguing when you hear some of the stories that I share in there. And I have this phrase, and you've heard me say it many times, Jess, love can't be taught, it needs to be encountered. I encountered love, and now I'm attempting to testify to it in the hope that it invites you into understanding more of his love.
So good. Yes. Yep. Those are all good questions. And I think one of my favorite moments that we had in the Q&A was the question around the idea of the blueprint and your experience with that as an engineer. And that was just a moment I remember. I already loved that line. I told you it was something that I read in the book that stuck with me. But then when I got to ask you about it in a larger group, the revelation that was just lingering inside, that was so much bigger than what was on the page, was such a gift and just expanded it even more. So I think that's just another piece of how great this course will be for people to be able to have the opportunity with you to speak into something that really stands out for them. So hopefully this is helpful for anybody that is interested in learning more. And you want to talk about how they can register, Matt?
Yeah, you can register through our website, and we'll put the link below so people can jump on into it. It's just at greaterthingsinternational.com. And it's limited to 49 people, and that's just for the amount of squares on a Zoom sheet that I have, because I want to see everybody. I want this to be an experience where people can engage with me. I want their questions to be heard. So every session is going to have an hour of teaching and an hour of Q&A. And we're looking for, like, once you've read it, to be in that place of just saying, can you explain where that came from? Can you help us understand that experience? And so giving people that opportunity just to sit with me and just go, let's just drill down into some of that stuff to see where it actually was born.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. All right. Well, that's all I have for you today, Matt. Thank you.
Cool. For everyone watching, thanks for hanging in there. I hope this
Yeah.
has been helpful. And if you want to register, please just click on the link below. Thanks so much, Jess.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.